Okay, so oh, sorry, I've gone too far. Just wanted to say we've split this into two sections to start with. So we will look at finances first, and then we will look at emergency funding and other funding afterwards. So the finances bit, we'll spend a bit of time looking at that, and then obviously look to the funding element of it afterwards. So hopefully your club's plan of action isn't a little bit like Dilbert's here. In unforeseen circumstances like now, your club's plan of action obviously are important, but they're unlikely to reflect the reality of the situation that we find ourselves in at the moment. I'm sure none of us have ever expected us to be in this kind of situation, and so therefore it's important to undertake some emergency financial planning for your club as soon as you can. Your club and organisation may already have some existing income and expenditure forecasts, or you may already have a well-developed business plan. But this is looking at how those can be developed and can be adapted for the situation. And hopefully, if something similar ever happened again, and hopefully that doesn't, but hopefully you would be in a better situation next time round. So when you're considering emergency financial planning, there are three initial steps that we can look at: creating a planning team, risk assessment, and then understanding your financial position. So in terms of creating a team, this might be the existing club committee, or it might be a smaller subcommittee. But obviously you want to enlist the help of those who know the finances best. So find a treasurer or membership secretary or whoever that might be, and work together to check and challenge each other's thinkings and assumptions. It's advisable that you put an action plan in place to obviously make sure you can meet your financial obligations. In terms of a risk assessment, you want to look at any risks, issues, and associated actions that will mitigate those risks during this period. We're aware of some clubs that have suffered vandalism and even arson in recent times. So obviously those types of things will need to be considered. And obviously we'll come up with unexpected costs or any maintenance should they actually happen. So you need to obviously understand your financial position, your costs and liabilities, as well as your income, cash in the bank, and any savings or reserves that you can access. This will help you calculate your immediate, so the next 3 months, and the short-term next 6 months financial position. It will also help you plan for any shortfalls you may have and think about any financial help you might need to address them. Possible expenditure items are listed there on the screen. Whether you can look at them and whether deem them essential, non-essential, and whether you can pay them, whether you need to pay them now, defer, spread the costs, or whether you need to look at trying to find some financial assistance, and that's something we'll come on to shortly. So obviously clubs like yourselves are always very creative and resourceful about how they generate income. Obviously income generation is done in different ways. We have 840 clubs and you all do it differently. Membership fees, subs, are obviously the main source of income, but other clubs may receive regular donations, have-a-goes, taster sessions. Some clubs do look at gift aid as well, and obviously sell kit and make a little bit of money, and even get some sponsorship as well. Having a real detailed understanding of your regular and ad hoc income is obviously an essential part of your emergency financial planning. Personally, for myself, I've always been worried about clubs that have a mixture of income that then pays for their expenditure, especially with clubs that look at their own, that look to take on a facility. I've certainly been recommending that the membership fees cover all the expenditure that the club has. And obviously situations like this where potentially half of your income or more from have-a-goes, taster sessions, tournaments, etc., is obviously not able to be brought in at the moment. It obviously makes me worried that clubs are going to be in a bit of a sticky situation. So hence the reason, one, to do this call tonight to try and get that information out there. But it's also pleasing that the likes of Sport England, Sport Scotland, etc., have got emergency funding available for clubs. Obviously, it's not the right time to hike up membership fees when no one can shoot, but certainly is something I think you guys should think about long term, is where that income comes from. Should there ever be a situation in the future where people coming to have-a-goes and taster sessions that would dry up, your income that you're bringing in from members would cover your expenditures. So you can profile your income, another little sheet just like before. So it is that income stream that you've got. You can detail them down the left hand side and then categorize them as secure or at risk, whether you would need some financial assistance to cover that off. And then obviously consider if the activities events could be rearranged. Obviously at this moment in time, we're not quite sure when we'll be all allowed out. So that's obviously quite difficult to do. But also, are your members happy? Well, maybe not happy, but would they consider still continuing to pay their membership fees? And we're going to look at grant providers shortly, but obviously we'd have to take on board the requirements of those any grants that you would seek. And what we're trying to do here is to avoid the loss of critical income, which would obviously make your club financially unstable.
Aaron,
yep.
Sorry, do you mind if I ask a question from Hugh?
Of course.
He was asking about whether that would include Sport Wales.
Yes, all the sports councils have now come out with emergency funding, and we will cover that in a few slides' time. So most clubs have some cash in the bank. Obviously, having worked in archery for 10 years now, I know that a lot of clubs save up for the chance to buy their own facility. But obviously now is the time where you might be thinking of dipping into those reserves, because obviously the survival of the club may be more at stake. A savings account that you may have, cash in the bank, whatever it may be. Obviously, you might be that they might be restricted, and you're saving it for something specific, or it might be to replace equipment that you want to do in a year's or couple of years time, or they might be unrestricted reserves, which in that case you can obviously take them and use them for unplanned projects. One thing obviously you might want to do is just check your constitution, your articles, your rules of the club that may allow you to do that. And if you had any reserves policy that you're following what they state. And if obviously if your constitution does refer to your reserves or savings or whatever it might be, you may have to go to your members and ask them that they're happy for you to spend that money. But again, that will depend on what you've got written in your own club's constitution. So looking at your income versus expenditure, lots of people's expenditure has stopped, but so has your income. So looking that on a weekly basis can give you some idea whether you're going to be in financial need or not. And what would the action be needed to help you generate any additional funds and obviously reduce any non-essential expenditure? I've been speaking to a number of clubs over the last few weeks, and obviously our clubs range from 1 or 2 members right up to 250 members. And our club I was speaking to the other day has told me that their loss of income from beginners courses, taster sessions and tournaments, and also that the club have target fees rather than a set membership lump sum. Their loss of income, a worst case scenario, was looking at around £12,000. So obviously that's quite a large club. Some of their expenditure won't have to be made for that as well, so the net is much lower than that. But where we've got clubs that thinking about that kind of loss of income, obviously it's going to have a big effect on the sport. And what is the priority? Where does the money need to go? You know, have you got expenses that need to be paid, or they could, as we said earlier, could they be deferred? Or have you got any debtors that you could encourage to pay, or you could look to put in some kind of long-term plan? Now is the time also to consider how your club is structured. A lot of clubs, archery clubs and hockey clubs, football clubs, etc., are what we would call unincorporated associations. So you have a constitution and you live by that constitution. Some clubs have their own facilities, so they might have changed their structure to become a limited company by guarantee, or a charity, or whatever it might be. So where they've changed that structure, the liability then is covered. So for instance, if they've changed to a limited company by guarantee, then the liability may be £1 per member. But if you're an unincorporated association, then you should be looking at your constitution carefully now and determining whether any of your trustees, directors, members would be financially liable for any losses. So it's a crucial time to be transparent with your members, and obviously to keep up to date with your financial position, and share any reports that you want to with your members, so that you are being open and transparent, and everybody knows the situation that the club is in. And as we just said a minute ago, if you wanted to draw on your reserves, then you may need to look at your constitution or your articles, and that may require you to call an extraordinary general meeting, or you may have your AGM coming up. And obviously you may then need to give notice to your bank or your building society to get access to that money if it's locked away in a special account. So that, with a nice little break in the middle, apologies again for that. That's the section that we've gone through in terms of emergency financial planning. If there are any questions now, we can bring you in, or you can ask in the chat box, and we can see if we can answer them. Obviously, if not, we can move on to the funding section, which is probably more interest to a lot of you. Okay, Helen, can you still hear me? I just want to check that before we move on.
Yeah, loud and clear. All good, thanks. We just have one question come in from Andrew. Thank you. Where can I find out more about liabilities in terms of club structures?
Yeah, so the liabilities will obviously be detailed in your constitution. So your constitution will state what would happen, or it should have state what would happen if your club had to fold, and if it doesn't necessarily state what you would do if there was debt to be paid, or whether there was any surplus funding left if the club did close down, then that might be something that you want to take a look at. We can always look through your constitution and give you some kind of independent advice on that as well. If you're unincorporated, the chances are that the committee would probably be liable for any debts, but it would depend on what your constitution says. So first step, go find your constitution and have a read of it. Second step, always come and speak to us if you want, and we can give you some advice and guidance. Okay, we'll move on then, because I think the next few slides will probably be obviously quite of interest to lots of you in terms of what funding's out there at the moment. So the first thing I think to look at was that obviously the sport of archery, the sport of hockey, the sport of football, all the sports need their clubs to be up and running as soon as they can be. We're already starting to think about how the lockdown would be. We would come out of that lockdown, the exit strategy for that lockdown, and how that would affect the running of obviously archery clubs. So that for us is something that we will come out to all clubs in the coming weeks and try to give some advice and guidance over that. But obviously, in the meantime, we've got clubs in very varying different situations. So again, I know that talking to some clubs over the last few weeks, some have had their renewal period right now and seen a drop right down to 50% of people renewing. So at the moment, you know, it would be really good to think about asking your members that whether they're going to renew, what if you're going to give any refunds, or whether you're going to give any extensions to membership. Obviously, some of your members no doubt will be experiencing financial difficulties, and you yourself might be as well. But I think you can ask the question whether people will still be willing to pay for their membership, whether they'll still be wanting to renew, because you know as well as I do that you will need some income to come out of this, whether it'll be paying for your outdoor field or whether it'll be paying for indoor facilities for the winter. So we do need to think about what that return to archery would be like. We are going to look for some fundraising and some income generation bits in the next section as well. But how could your club can do that as well? So are you at the moment engaging with your members? Are you telling them what's going on? Are you sharing funny things or snippets? Is there a chance to support the local community or raise funds for vulnerable people or the NHS? Two of the ideas around some membership stuff is the Robin Hood approach, which is giving members the option to continue to pay monthly subscriptions. So that way you can, those that can continue to pay their subs, but you can also potentially offer reduced fees for those that can't manage to continue to pay. Or the pay it forward approach, which I'm sure many of you are aware of, and where you pay up front for somebody else. So I think coffee shops do that a lot for homeless people, but is there people in your club that would be willing to pay next year's subscriptions, membership fees of somebody who's in real need? And as well as the funding options that we're going to go into shortly, one thing that a club told me about today is that because they are a limited company and they've been claiming small business rate relief and the discretionary sports relief, because they, as I said, they own their ground, they've been able to tap into the small business support grant, which is a one-off grant of £10,000. And I think the club told me it took about 10 minutes to apply for. So if any of you are in that situation, that might be something that you can tap into. It may then affect your ability or eligibility to apply for some of the sports community emergency funds, but I'm sure that a £10,000 grant would be quite a good thing to get hold of at this time.
Aaron, we have had Denise ask the question, is Archer GB likely to give any reductions, which I know we've been considering lately?
Yep. So at this time, in the last CEO update, we're not intending to give any refunds. For the current membership year, we haven't, as far as I'm aware, we haven't made any decisions on what the next membership year will look like. But obviously, if we do, we will notify people via the website and in the Easy to Club secretaries as soon as that decision is made. So in terms of the community emergency funds, the first sports council to put out information was Sport England. So I'm going to concentrate on that for the first couple of slides, and then we'll get to the other sports councils. At this time, we're aware of 6 clubs that have received money from or funding from Sport England through the Community Emergency Fund. So it is a bit like their small grants fund. The amounts are between £300 and £10,000, and it really is focusing on those clubs that are experiencing that short-term financial hardship. So 2 of the examples that I've got from archery clubs, one club in the south of the country, well, both of them from the south of the country, one of them received £2,300 recently from Sport England, and the reasons for that grant were for loss of income from our open shoot, loss of income from beginners courses, and then non-renewing members. And the second club, I'm not too sure exactly what they applied for because I've only just found out this afternoon, but they applied for £8,000, but they received £4,600. So again, you know, they were quite happy with that, because obviously that allows them to not think about the now and can think about the future, and that takes the pressure off a little bit. I don't know which one of you is online, whether it's Carmel and Dave, or both of you, but hello, thanks for the question. As of the other day, we knew that one archery club had been rejected from Sport England, and 6 had actually been approved. They have had 5,000 applications, and I believe that, well, this was numbers from the other day, 800 of them have been assessed. So it is taking a bit of time to go through those, but if you are facing ongoing costs, rent, utility, facility, equipment, or retrospective losses from the 1st of March, then we're encouraging you to, if you're in financial need, we are encouraging you to put in a grant. And Denise, they're not all incorporated. This is for sports clubs, so it's Sport England are encouraging people to look at the whole range of support that's coming from the government, and where possible, to look at other sources. So it might be, as I said before, with the limited companies, they could receive a £10,000 grant. So you might then not be eligible for Sport England funding. If those other government sources haven't been relevant or suitable for your club, then Sport England would be interested in receiving your application. But you obviously would need to fulfill the criteria. This next slide highlights the key questions they're going to ask. So they'll want to know how you're going to spend the funding, how you've calculated the requested value, how much income do you estimate you're going to lose from the 1st of March through to the 31st of July. They are asking how much reserves you've got, how much savings you've got, but obviously they want to know why you've got that. So if you had £5,000, £10,000 in reserves or savings, and you can say, right, well, actually, we were going to spend 5 or 6 of that on new equipment for the summer, then the likelihood is you know they're not going to take much interest in those reserves, because they know that equipment is vital for your needs. If you've got £50,000 in the bank and you're asking for, you know, £500, the chances are that they would probably turn that down. So they also are asking on the right there, they're asking about what your organisation does, what your club delivers to the community. So obviously, in a lot of cases, archery clubs do provide a lot to their communities through taster sessions and have-a-goes and beginners courses and demonstrations. So great opportunity there to highlight what you've been doing over the last 12 months. And obviously, you know, what would the consequences be if your organisation is not successful in securing that funding? So if the chances are that your club may go bust, for want of a better word, then obviously that's the type of information they want to know, because it is a quick and easy application, and they're not spending much time checking the backgrounds to it. So you know, the more information you can give them about the need for you to receive the funding, the better. Hi John. John's asked whether so they're a new club and just starting up, and so don't need emergency funding yet, but there is their startup funding available. So Sport England, let's say you're in England. I'm not quite sure where you are, but let's say you're in England now. So Sport England have repurposed their small grants fund. So in normal circumstances, John, I would be saying let's put an application into Sport England small grants scheme. I checked out the situation earlier, and that scheme is actually on hold. So at the moment, they're obviously diverting their funds to this emergency funding. How much of that will be left after we come out of this crisis is obviously a very good question. So at the moment, they're not supplying any funds to their other schemes. They are focusing on the emergency funding. There is some information about potential funding coming up in the next couple of slides, but it might be that we can perhaps arrange a separate conversation to find out where you are in the country, and we can do a kind of a funding search based on your club postcode, and try and help you in that way instead. For those of you not in England, the other sports councils have been doing something similar. So Sports Scotland has got a whole page dedicated to advice on how to cope in this current situation. And I've not put the links there, but I think that red text does link to it. But if you're in Scotland, just go to just Google Sports Scotland and then click on the COVID-19 bit. So they do have information on emergency grants, loans, VAT, general advice, etc. The Welsh Government and Sport Wales have put together an initial fund of £8.1 million, and 400,000 of that is for community sport. So you can approach them and in a similar way to Sport England, and I assume they will ask very similar questions in terms of what's your need, what income have you lost, and how would it help your club survive. I believe Helen, you speak to a Welsh club last week, and they were having a bit of difficulties with the form.
Yes, they think that the information was completely available as to how to apply just yet, but there is an email set up specifically that people can use to get in touch with Sport Wales, and the details of that are on their website.
Right, excellent, thank you, Helen. So we'll add that email address to this slide as well. But again, just Google Sport Wales, and I'm sure you'll be able to find the information yourselves. And Sport Northern Ireland, if there's any Northern Irish clubs involved tonight, or when they look back over this recording, just today I found out that I think it was from a few days ago, but they've got small grants of £2,000 available to help with immediate financial commitments. Some additional funding. So John, this might be obviously relevant to you in this time as well. It's gone off the page a little bit there, but sorry about that. So some that I found today that are still providing funding opportunities. So Persimmon Homes, they've got 2 schemes out at the moment: Building Futures and Community Champions. So they've been investing in sport for the last couple of years now. So the Building Futures is investing £1 million to support children in sport, health and education. And so they're looking on local groups in your area to support. So I think that's kind of you put the name of the group forward, and people kind of vote for it. And the Community Champions as well, they're giving out £64,000 every month in donations up to £1,000. So the last few years, that they're giving out £3.5 million. So I think I'm aware of a couple of archery clubs that have managed to tap into that. From April, that funding goes to supporting over 70s, but again, that might be something that you as a club might be doing already, or you might have quite a number of over 70s involved in your club already and want to attract more, so there's a potential for money there. If you are in England, there is a network of active partnerships. These were formerly called county sports partnerships. The website just looks like it's cut off the page there, but activepartnerships.org, and then you can find your local active partnership. They again are responding in the same way as we are and other organisations are. They want to make sure that leisure and sports clubs and organisations are coping in this situation, and because they are more local, they'll have an understanding of the funding available in each of their counties. Active partnerships are only in England, so the situation across the borders in Wales, Northern Ireland, Scotland is slightly different. It would be probably best to approach your local authority, or if there's a sports council involved, approach them to see if they've got some relevant funding information at this time. The other two organisations that we'd probably say to you to go and have a look at is the community foundations. So there's 46 across the UK. So their website's there, ukcommunityfoundations.org. So they have a list of different grants available, and the councils for voluntary service. So again, they're like the community foundations. They're a national organisation, but locally there is a community foundation in each district or borough or county, whatever it might be. So if you searched for community foundation, Nottinghamshire or Staffordshire or wherever you are in the country, you'll probably come across it, and you'll be able to find more local information about grants in your area. And the Funding Central website, if you've never been there before, that's a really good website. So fundingcentral.org.uk, free to use for voluntary sports clubs. And John, coming back to you, that's one that will probably could help you look at the funding available in your area. Oh, I've clicked on a bit too far. The next area is easy fundraising. I know that some of you have already signed up to this, but we signed a partnership with Easy Fundraising a couple of months ago. They've been in existence for over 10 years. And it's a really simple way where clubs can raise donations. So it works, it's like a cashback scheme, and it works that where your members will buy things from the internet, or purchase insurance or holidays, obviously not at the moment perhaps, there is a small cashback that comes back to your club. Now at this time, obviously the Easy Fundraising are pushing that quite heavily across sport as a way of raising funds, because people like Amazon, etc., are still taking orders, taking deliveries. There might be a bit of a delay, but they're obviously still doing that. So we've had a good take up of this from clubs recently, and we ran a webinar a couple of weeks ago, and the Easy Fundraising guys came onto the webinar and ran that and told clubs how to get involved, and the resources that Easy Fundraising have to help clubs increase the amount of donations that they receive through the scheme. A really good aspect of this scheme is that they have a coach, what they call a coaching team. So once you've signed up to it, you can ask for a callback from somebody at Easy Fundraising, and they will talk you through the process. They will tell you how best to run the scheme in your club. And it obviously works best when as many members as possible use that easy fundraising website to go through and then click through to some of the retailers that are there at the bottom of the screen. So whilst people might not be booking holidays or booking hotels, they may be switching their car insurance or switching their home insurance, buying stuff from Amazon, whatever it might be, and all that would raise some funds without you guys having to necessarily do something, and that obviously can be put towards equipment, targets, whatever else the club might need to spend that money on. Always keen to make sure that you know that because we've signed a partnership with Easy Fundraising, that Archery GB receives a portion of not the club's donation, but receives a portion of the donations that Easy Fundraising receive. Just want to be open and honest with you about that, so you knew we were getting that, but we have had agreement that that money will be directed back to the clubs that have signed up. So that website, easyfundraising.org.uk/archery-GB. If you go there, that registration, it's free to join up, only takes a few moments, and you get your club up and running on that. Hi Chrissy, Chrissy's asked whether the Easy Fundraising webinar is available online, and yes, I believe it is now on the Archery GB YouTube page. So you should be able to find it there, and if you don't, please come back and let me know, but that's where I believe it is.
We also had another question about the Sport England emergency funding, about if clubs weren't aware at the moment of how much or costs they might incur or losses they might make, because they don't yet know what their next membership year looks like, how many members might rejoin. Just to confirm that the fund doesn't cover any costs incurred beyond the end of July, I believe. Is that right, Aaron?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So it is from March to July.
Yeah. I think that's a good question. That obviously at the moment they are looking at that time period, that 1st of March to the end of July, and if your renewal period is outside of that window, I think it might be a case of having to just wait and see what happens. We all hope that it's at least going away by July, so we can get outside. But if you are not necessarily incurring any losses at the moment, it's probably unlikely that Sport England would fund you. I had a conversation with a club earlier who were asking whether they're thinking of putting an application into Sport England, but they also were thinking about equipment, because they were seeking to buy new equipment with the income that they should have got this year. I'm not too sure whether Sport England would give them the funding for that, because when I went onto their website, it did say that new activity is not allowed with the emergency fund. So they are really targeting it at clubs who are losing income right now. So there are other sources as well. So there is obviously the government's website. It's got daily information about the coronavirus pandemic. So if you haven't been there, there is a lot of information on their website. They're obviously trying to make sure it's all available. And as I said, you know, people like Sport England, Sport Scotland, Sport Wales, etc., they do want clubs, sports clubs, to look at the range of different financial support that is available and then choose the one that's best suited for you. In a lot of cases, you will all go for the sport emergency funding, no doubt. But if you were eligible for some of the others financial support, then it would be good to look at that. I would encourage you to, we did mention this earlier, to speak to your local authority as well. So if you did have a sports development officer locally, if they're still working, or a sports council or an active partnership, find their website, go to your normal contact. If you're struggling, let Helen and I know, and we can hopefully put you in touch with somebody more local who can tell you a little bit about the financial support available locally. The club that I referenced earlier, who got the £10,000 grant, were directly approached by their local authority because they are a limited company by guarantee. So the local authorities are being very active, and if you haven't reached out to them to see if there's any other funding information or support available, then I'd encourage you to do so. On our website, we're trying to keep you up to date with all the latest information, so we will put out press releases every now and again, or CEO updates, or whatever the information might be. But the standard page where we'll keep it all updated, because obviously sometimes it does drop off, the news on the front of the website is that one that's on the screen now. So the archerygb.org/COVID-19. So that one will always be updated as well. Excuse me. And Sport England's website's got lots of coronavirus information for the sports sector as well, as Sport Scotland and Sport Wales websites as well. So I'll make sure they seem to have dropped off there. So I'll make sure I'll add them there as well, so you can find them. So that comes to the end of our formal presentation. Very happy to take any questions or that you may have that not been covered previously. So if you want to either put them in the chat function, or if you want to let Helen know, and we can unmute you and we can have a conversation, however you want to do it. We've got 15-20 minutes to answer as many questions you have as possible. Nobody wants to go first. Helen, whilst we're waiting to see if there's any questions, is there anything from you? Is there any anything that stood out for you?
I think that was clear. I think there are a few questions coming in about obviously the recording, just to remind people that this will be shared, the recording of today. So if you wanted to share it with other committee members or other people in your club, you think it would be useful for them to hear or see it. There are some questions coming in now as well. Yeah, so will the presentation slides be available online? So yeah, we will make a recording available. And are there any specific saving accounts that Archery GB would recommend?
Oh, that's a good question. Not too sure about that, to be honest. Is there anybody else that's on the webinar at the moment that has any thoughts about specific savings accounts? I'm afraid my knowledge of savings accounts would be very limited. I don't have any money. I've got 2 children that use it all.
Yeah, so the suggestion to refer to Martin Lewis might be a good one. I don't know about savings accounts either, especially for sports clubs. I know there are restrictions as to what accounts sports clubs can access as well, aren't there? So, yeah, can we find, where online can we find these presentations? That's also another good question.
The presentations we've done tonight and the other ones, is that what,
Yes.
is that what that refers to?
Also, good question around where to find the Easy Fundraising recording.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are gonna make available. We've got a series of webinars. So we are going to make all the webinars available as much as possible on the, firstly on the Archery GB YouTube account, so that anybody can obviously watch them there. John's just asked about emailing out the slides. So yes, all of you that's been on the call, that registered for the call tonight, we'll send a copy of the slides to you. And then we'll put the links on the website as well, so that anybody can grab them there as well. So yeah, we want as many people as possible. Even there's only 22 or 20 of you here tonight, we want as many people as possible to hear and see this information. So Greasley tournaments, I'm assuming that's Sharon. Hello Sharon, how are you? We've been set a time limit to get work done on our access road. Without our tournament income, we cannot afford to do work. Could we put that in a funding application? Oh, that's a good question. My worry there is that Sport England would see that as a new activity. When you say a time limit, is that by the landlord, or is that a planning application, or I think it might be best, Sharon, if we took that one offline. It's a bit specific, so we could arrange to talk tomorrow or Friday and see if we can bottom that out, if that's okay with you.
We've also got a question about. Oh.
Yeah, go on, Helen.
Yeah. The impact of lockdown on clubs not being known just yet until we're out of lockdown, which is very true. And that they could find that we lose clubs as their full losses may not be known until after this is blown over. Do we know what support will be available when we're back to normal? Which obviously is a very difficult question to address, because the situation is very unknown at the moment.
Yeah, that's a really good comment, and I think this is why we started talking tonight in our webinar series around not just funding, but obviously finances. And I know that some of the information we talked at the beginning was very high level and may not have gone into too much depth, but we do want clubs to consider what their financial situation is, and to really think about how they will look coming out of this situation. For me personally, I'm the chairman of a hockey club. We've got 250 members, and we've stopped at the end of, or in the middle of March. The school closed their facilities. They're outside groups. We had 3 or 4 games to finish, and they've obviously now been written off, and the season's finished. So for us as a winter sport, the financial situation is not going to impact us at all. We've had all of our membership income in. We've paid all of our bills. The only thing we had to do was finish off a couple of games, and obviously then run our AGM. And then we're back in September, fingers crossed. But for summer sports, who their income is not so well known, when it's supplemented by have a go's beginners courses. Yeah, it does worry me a lot that some clubs may be burying their heads and just thinking we'll just stop everything and just come out of this, when lockdown's released. So I would encourage you to share this information, ask clubs to get involved, to get in touch with us if you know of any clubs that are struggling. We had a call with the regional chairs and secretaries yesterday. I want to try and reach out to counties as well, and we've had a club survey that we put out. Over 300 people have replied to that club survey, so we've got a really good idea of the support that's needed and wanted, but there is a lot of clubs that haven't been in touch with us and maybe burying their heads, and that is something that does literally give me sleepless nights, because I'm worried about how the sport will be when it come out of it. But fingers crossed, we all hope it won't be as bad as we fear. Sue's asking about fundraising, easy fundraising. So if you've already registered with them, how easy is it to get it registered through ArcherGB? There's nothing to do there, Sue. The only thing that will affect is the donations that come to ArcherGB. So even though you registered with Easy Fundraising before the partnership, that it doesn't matter. You will still get the same service as a club signing up now, and the same donations. The only difference is that they're only going to give ArcherGB those donations from the clubs that have registered in this since we signed the partnership. So don't worry, nothing to be done there.
Yeah. Denise, question about loss of income from their target fees, which I've gone back to her about. That if you can evidence the losses that you would have incurred between March and July, it might be worth looking into applying for funding. And there is all the information about the funding on their website, or you're welcome to contact us about that if you want some further assistance. And Emma's asked a question around if they're given the go-ahead to recommence shooting. If the premises, which is a school, is not reopened, we will not be given access. All of our club's assets are currently locked on site and our keys have been recalled. So yeah, we're all waiting to see what happens in terms of how we come out of the lockdown, in terms of when schools or how schools might reopen. But it's difficult to come up with any definites at the moment.
Yeah, no, absolutely, that's right. We have been looking at, obviously we've got every club to register their range, so we know where they are and we can work out whether they're a school or a field in the middle of nowhere. And we can, but what we're starting to do now is to look at those clubs that potentially may, as you say, may be restricted if the school doesn't open. So I don't know, as an example, and this is just me coming up with something off the top of my head, not anything that I've heard or anything like that, but if the schools do reopen before summer, the chances are that they'll only reopen for their own pupils, and as you say there, that you might not be given access to it until maybe September. And other clubs will have similar situations as well, whether they're at a school or not. One of the topics of discussion that we had last week with some club members and internally ourselves as well is to start identifying those clubs that are big enough to offer shooting to other club members in their region or their counties. So, you've got a very large club that has their own facility. Could they help smaller or medium-sized or even larger clubs that are restricted by where their facilities are and offer a chance for guest shooting. What that guest shooting looks like, that's another question, another time for us to think about whether it's still social distancing or everything like that. But I think obviously some clubs, some schools may well, Peter's made a point here. His wife's a teacher. Schools are likely to be open. That might be the case. Absolutely. I think until we know what the exit strategy from the lockdown is, it's a bit of a $1 million question. So yeah. Okay, so if there is anybody that's got a question that they don't want to type, that's better answered using our voices, then feel free to kind of stick your hand up and say, and we can unmute you and we can have a conversation. If there's stuff that you want to talk to us about that you don't necessarily want to air in front of everybody else, then Helen and I are still working at the moment. So, you can always contact us in the morning or later on this week, or drop us an email and ask us to get in touch with you. The webinar series is happening every Wednesday night. We went early with this one because this GoToMeeting system is being used by somebody else at 7 o'clock, who has just emailed me to say, when are you finishing? So, but the other webinars are happening at 7 o'clock every night. So I know a lot of you have signed up to the others as well. We do have a problem with some of the Sport England ones, the Club Matters ones, but we'll be in touch with everybody who's signed up to them and let you know what the situations are. They unfortunately, although we've had 20 people on this call, they're restricting theirs to 12. So we'll have to get in touch with the first 12 people and then see if we can arrange another one later on, which Helen, I believe you're already on the case. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. There may well be webinars becoming available, so just keep watching the communication channels.
And like, virus or no virus, we in the club's team, Helen, myself, and others, are always here for you. So if you have any questions on this topic or other topics, then do please get in touch with us. Either drop us an email or get in touch via phone. At the moment, we're around a lot, so yeah, please do get in touch. So if there is a few things coming in here, so I'm just reading these. Just checking there's nothing else to be said. And Andrew's asking about using the video conferencing. I'm afraid that's probably not possible at this time because it's being used quite a lot. But happy to have a conversation with you and point you in the direction of some other resources. And yes, I'll get in touch and we can have a conversation.
Yeah, if Andrew was thinking about committee meetings or AGMs, then we've got a webinar coming up about that as well.
Yeah. Susan said you can use Zoom. There is obviously, yeah, as she said, there has been some privacy issues with Zoom, but I think they've resolved that, so you can obviously stop people Zoom bombing your conference. And Microsoft Teams was a bit shaky at the beginning, and that's something that we use internally. But that's free, I believe, as well. I'm not too sure whether there's a restriction on that, but Microsoft Teams has got really good over the last couple of weeks as well. So, okay, well, I think we'll call it a day there. Thanks so much for being involved tonight. I really do appreciate it. I hope you've got something out of tonight. If there's specific issues that are related to your club, as I said, please do get in touch with us, drop us an email or phone us up and have a conversation with us. Some of the other stuff you may wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and think about a question you should have asked. So get in touch with us, and we will send the slides, we'll send the recordings, and the good thing about the system as well is that it saves the texts as well. So the comments you're making now are saved as well. So what we'll also do is make sure that we answer all those questions in a sheet as well, so you've got the answers to them as well. So thank you so much for being involved, and you are now free to enjoy the rest of your evening. So thank you and good night.